Now we're going to switch gears. On a scale of 0 to 10, I want to ask you, 0 being uncomfortable, 10 being comfortable, how do you feel when you're around a person with a disability?
The woman addressing a crowd in this video describes herself as a little person advocate and public speaker for disability inclusion on a global scale. She has a passion for influencing change behind the scenes and in the entertainment industry. She sent me an email last week and asked if she could share her message with our Morning Blend audience. I love her story, her commitment to change, and her positive outlook on life.
That's right. Becky Curran. Am I saying it right? Is it Curran or Curran?
Curran.
Okay, is a motivational speaker, and she also serves on the board of advisors for the National Center for Disability Journalism at Arizona State University. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Really nice to see you.
I
brought you both pencils with my motto and my website.
Love it.
Okay, I probably won't be able to
Anything
read it
is
without my
possible with
like
your
that.
website, BeckyMotivates.com. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You don't know this yet, but Molly has an obsession with sharpening pencils.
I do.
And pencil sharpeners. So this is a true story.
They went out of style. So I'm glad they're still.
You're right on track with her.
Click.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what you do and why you think, and maybe some of the response. I love the question that you posed, how uncomfortable on a scale of 1 to 10 do you feel when you see someone with a disability? What do people admit to saying?
I think the biggest struggle is that there are so few little people in the country, 30,000 to be exact, and in the world only 180,000. And most little people are born to average height parents. My dad's 6'4". My mom's average 5'4"-ish.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Do parents who have a little person, do they carry a gene
Usually
for that?
It's a mutation. We don't like to use the word mutation,
Right.
but it's something that happens while they're producing a
So
child.
a change that happens while the child is growing.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Do you have average height siblings?
Yes, I have one sister and she's 5'4".
Okay.
So continue with what you're
So this is the case for most families in the country where there's a little person. So my parents, they had never seen a little person except for in the media before coming to the hospital and being told that their child has dwarfism. And the only reason they found that out was that there was a nurse in the delivery room who had seen a little person be delivered before. And my parents basically had to start from scratch and figure out, how do we learn as much as possible in order to give our child the most independent and fulfilling life that she deserves to have? So they did research for 6 months. They actually went to a hospital in Boston where I was born, and it was Tufts Medical Center. Now, luckily, the sign has changed, but they were told to go see a geneticist. They got to the hospital, and the receptionist said, go down the hall, follow the sign that says birth defects. And my dad knew he had to be an advocate, and he got them to change the sign to genetics. And it's important to make sure that you use the proper terminology in order to make people feel as comfortable as they can, but also to educate that it's okay. There are resources available. We need to continue to have more, but raise someone just like you'd raise anyone else.
What are the proper terms that people should be using? Because I think there's a lot of terms that people use that they don't know are not correct or PC or even that feel good.
Absolutely.
So what should people say?
I'm okay being called a little person or a dwarf. Dwarfism is the diagnosis. I also identify as being a person with a disability because we require accommodation. So under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we are included. I do not prefer the word midget. That to the little people community is very similar to using the N-word and other terms in other communities.
It's derogatory.
And I think people continue to use it because there are so few of us out there to be able to educate.
Yeah, or speak up.
I really prefer if someone just calls me by my name.
Yeah.
And then I can tell them my story. I always tell people, no questions to me are offensive. I'd rather be able to educate you than for you to continue assuming how I live my life or how sad I am to live my life this way.
I wonder always, because I think about my own children when they were young and growing up, and times that we would encounter people who had a disability. And I think about the fact that kids stare without realizing that it's rude or that it makes people uncomfortable. It's very honest because when they see someone with a disability, they're curious about it and they know that people look different. And I just wonder how you deal with and your education to people as it relates to people staring, maybe especially children.
I feel the best advice for parents is to allow your child to go up and be curious and ask questions. I just remember growing up and going shopping with my mom, and there are often times where a parent would pull their child away, or even sometimes there have been parents that point to their child and say, look over there. And those are when it's the most
You're like,
unacceptable.
really? Yeah.
But I would say it's okay for them to be curious. I've been invited to children's birthday parties. I've enjoyed spending time with children, educating them, and as I get to know them, and once they realize that I play soccer just like they do, I can hug my parents just like they do, I can interact with the animals even though you may think that they could attack me.
Right.
The best question I ever got asked was, do your hair and teeth grow the same? I said, I think so. But I think just normalizing it and having a conversation with these children and adults is just allowing people to understand we're human just like everyone else.
What about what you said in the opening about not finding a job for several years? I mean, that to me is a little heartbreaking.
Yes. What I ended up doing was I went to college, got an education, was a marketing major, had several internships in college that allowed me to prepare for applying to jobs. I moved from Providence, Rhode Island, where I went to school, to Los Angeles. I was actually supposed to work for a manager, a talent manager, who was a little person herself. And that ended up falling through the moment I got there. So I ended up sending out 1,000 resumes, and I went on 100 interviews around Los Angeles. And every time I walked in the door, even though I was qualified to at least get the interview, I was approached in fear. And I never got that constructive feedback of, oh, you were a terrible interviewer. Because I could live with that. I could live with the fact that I needed to practice my interview skills. But I couldn't live with the fact of not knowing why they didn't like me just based on my appearance. And what my goal is to make sure that doesn't continue to happen to people, because everyone deserves to have a chance getting into the workforce. I think people forget that even when we wake up out of bed, there are so many challenges we face before even getting out the door. I know we were talking about even in the house, trying to have different accommodations, to be able to reach the lights, to be able to wash my hands. I want to just try to fit in as much as everyone else and want as few accommodations as possible. And I think when people enter the workforce, there's that often fear of accommodation costs. It's going to cost so much, liability. But these people are going to put in 100% and beyond, and that's what I've been able to do in every job I've had since that interview process, because I needed to continue to prove that I was going to give it my all and I wanted to move up. But I also appreciate constructive feedback, because I think people fear to give that when they just don't know who's around them or much about them. It's important to also be honest and give someone that equal chance, rather than trying to bring people with disabilities up higher than the rest of the population because they've been left behind for so long. We want to get to that even playing field.
Normalize it.
Such a great message. Thank you so much for joining us.
So glad you came.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
We're lucky to have you here today. TheMorningBlend.com is our website. People can visit to find out more about Becky. I know you're always willing to speak to school groups, workplace discussions. It's a wonderful message that you bring, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again.
Appreciate it.